$269 billion worth of mortgages that people are defaulting on. Now, the OSFI has said that this is a dangerous product, but nobody is doing anything to address the issue at the moment. The banks are in serious trouble in Canada as the housing bubble is falling apart, and we're going to get into that and much more in today's episode. So let's dig right into what is going on here. So record low sales of new homes offers plenty of opportunities for home buyers. Opportunities? That's what they're saying? Okay, we'll see. So let's see what they're saying here. So high interest rates and slow pre-construction sales in the GTA have sent new home sales into a record tailspin this year. Remember, after they said it was going to be booming, sales of new builds plummeted 56% in April compared to last year and are 65% lower than the 10-year average, according to the BILD, which relies on Altus Group data. High interest rates and slow pre-construction sales, he said, have created a critical situation for the future of housing supply of the GTA and demands the attention of all levels of government to create the economic and investment climate to balance the market over the next several years. And we have to remember, again, we have to think critically here. Obviously, the market and the future supply is not purely just based on new construction. That is completely stupid. Yet, you would believe the argument put forward by the real estate industry and the developers is that new construction is the one and only thing. Even politicians like Pierre are constantly saying we need to build, build, build. And that might be true to an extent. But the population growth we have, a lot of the people coming in fact, most of the people coming in, haven't got two pennies to rub together. So they're not jumping into the housing market. They're moving into rooms with 20 other people, as we have covered on this channel. They're living in poverty and squalor conditions. So their impact on the housing market is actually really limited, even though the real estate industry and developers make it seem like it's absolutely massive, because obviously it fits their narrative, which is they want lower interest rates, etc., etc. So that's what they're kind of pointing towards with that. Without action, we are looking at an acute shortage of supply in the next 2 or 3 years. But again, I mean, you are forgetting about demand. There's all this talk about supply, but obviously demand has been absolutely plummeting, and demand is at a massive low right now. So this is the hilarious thing about these developers. The developers are coming out and saying, we need to take some action here. Meanwhile, home sales are at like a 15-year low. And they're saying, yeah, we need to just build, build, build. But there's no demand out there. So doesn't that then show you that actually the market is more based on sentiment, is more based on what's happening with the cost of debt, because it's in a massive debt-based bubble? And I think that's really what's going on here, which is more towards the truth. With months of inventory at a 15-year high and prices down year over year. Again, with this sort of narrative, how on earth can you come out and say we need to keep building, we need more supply, we're going to be so many homes short if we don't do anything? Yet the amount of inventory is at a 15-year high. I mean, they must just think people are completely stupid. So total new home remaining inventory stood at 20,092 units last month. This includes 16,478 condo units and 3,614 single-family homes. This is one of the highest inventory levels for new properties in the last decade. And yeah, that's because we've been in a massive housing bubble and people can't afford it. And they built so many condos because the market was entirely speculative. And when you look at these condo buildings, you know, half of the units are freaking empty because they're just pure speculation for investors, these condos. So the amount of condos that are out there just demonstrates not the amount of condos that we need because there's so many people rushing into the market, but the amount of condos that were built because of the perceived amount of investors that were going to be coming into the market. Because during that speculative mania, they just thought, oh my God, we need to build, build, build. We just got this unbelievable, unprecedented demand. And then that's what happens. But obviously now they don't have that demand. So why on earth would they be saying, oh, we need more money, we need lower interest rates so we can build build. They're obviously talking more about the demand equation, but they don't want to point to that. They want to try and spin this narrative that it's all about immigration, it's all about population growth, and we're so many homes short in this country. Again, it's just laughable. You can easily pick apart what they say. So the benchmark price for a new condo unit in April was $1,056,000, down 4% year over year. The average condo measures 782 square feet and costs $1,351 per square foot. I mean, that is just insane. Is it seriously $1 million? And if it's down 4% year over year, guys, we only have to go to shadow stats, inflation, and yes, this is for the United States, but we've used it many times in this. And you can see that they're saying inflation, is around 2%. Shadow stats is saying it's between 10 and 15%. So you can add that to your 4%. You're talking about year over year in real terms being down 15%. And it gets even worse or better, depending on the way you look at it, for single family homes. So the benchmark price for a new single family home was $1.6 million, 9% lower than April last year. So that's down 9%. And obviously this is higher than the average price for just a used home, which is why nobody is buying again, because basically the price of new construction is ridiculous. You're getting less of the land as well when you're buying a new single family home. They put them so close together. And obviously, again, if inflation was 12%, let's say, because we don't believe the CPI on this channel, then add 12% to 9%. And where are you guys? Where are you? You're talking about 21% down year over year in real terms, and still absolutely nowhere near affordability, which is usually where these things crash down to when these bubbles deflate. So it's very, very interesting. And now I wanted to show you this article. So harder than anything, Ontario families' mortgage payments to increase by more than $2,000. This was put out before the interest rate announcement that came out. And basically they were saying how they're going to have to pay $2,000 a month extra. They had a 3-year fixed rate, which was at 3.2%. And she says here her husband has increased his workload, working a 70-hour week. One thing that was interesting is they were renting for a decade, and then the family of 10 bought the 5-bedroom house about 2 hours north of Toronto for $800,000 in 2021 at the peak of the bubble, at the peak of the mania. So obviously you've got this sob story and we've got to feel sorry for them. But I mean, again, were they enticed into the market by FOMO? Were they being led by their emotions? Did they consult a financial advisor? Although I'm not sure that would have really done much help either. I just keep praying and praying it comes down just 0.25%. Well, her praying paid off because it did come down 0.25%. But that's really not going to make a meaningful difference. And then if you look at what's happened to the average payment in Canada, it's just shooting up and up and up. And you can basically draw a line of defaults and it's going to be doing the exact same thing. So Canada is flatter, obviously Toronto, the home prices are much higher, and that's why that has skyrocketed even more. The debt levels are just that much higher. And that's why we're seeing insolvencies and defaults that are rising, especially when it comes to these risky mortgages, which we're going to get onto right now, because I believe it's just so hilarious. So again, with the article from the start here, you would be led to believe that, oh my God, they're putting all this money away for default, so that must mean everything is fine. And we'll get into just how many billions of dollars of these dodgy mortgages are out there. So together, the lenders recorded $4.3 billion in provisions for credit losses, PCLs, in the second quarter, an increase from $4.1 billion in the first quarter. Now, first thing I want to highlight is insolvencies are rising, defaults are rising, and the trend is just going to continue up. Even though the Bank of Canada cut 25 basis points, that is not going to make a difference to these people. No matter what they tell you, it's just not going to make a difference. The only thing that might make a difference too is the sentiment in the housing market, because essentially the housing market is in a bubble. It's not driven by any fundamental fundamentals at this time, but it is reverting to those fundamentals. But there's always the case that people will get this sugar rush and think, oh my God, rates are going to come down to the floor or home prices are going to skyrocket from here. And it's very hard to tell what is going to actually happen next. I mean, obviously, the real estate industry is going to drive this home that, hey, the Bank of Canada is cut. Now might be time to start looking at real estate again. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And I'm not making any predictions there because honestly, I think it's 50-50. So they've put 4.1 billion away here. So if we go on to how many of these fixed payment variable rate mortgages are out there. So basically, when you look at it, the OSFI estimates there is 369 billion worth of outstanding mortgages of the total mortgage market of 2.1 trillion that currently have fixed payment variable rate products. Of those, approximately 260 billion worth have seen their amortization period soar to 35 years or longer. So, I mean, the bank's putting away $4.1 billion for their credit loss provisions in a market that minimum is about $269 billion of the mortgages where people can't afford, and they're essentially defaulting. They're essentially $269 billion worth of mortgages that people are defaulting on. Now, the OSFI has said that this is a dangerous product, but nobody is doing anything to address the issue at the moment. I mean, the Bank of Canada has cut rates 25 basis points, but again, completely meaningless. But you can see how the risk is just going to boil over in the system because as those people owe more and more and more money and their home values just aren't increasing because guess what? Even the Bank of Canada doesn't control home prices. Then guess what? These people aren't going to be able to pay that money back. Defaults are already rising and the banks know this, so they're putting more money away, but they're just not putting enough away and they don't have enough liquidity to cover a mass default event. So let's say the unemployment and the labor market really starts to break apart, which is commonly what happens during these business cycles, then guess what you're going to see? You're going to see a massive amount of defaults that start coming in, or you're going to see people who need to now sell their home, and that's where the problems start arising because then they owe more than the house is worth, and you end up in that 2008 scenario. So the assets, those loans are toxic, and even the regulator has said that they are toxic, exactly like we have done on this channel. And even in places like Calgary, guys, you know, the dream of home ownership is now fading. I mean, this echoes the sort of stories that we would hear in 2021, and people would say, you know what, home prices are just never going to go down there. There's loads of people moving there. This is just the next boom town of the century. Everything is going to be fine. So let's see what they're saying in this story. So Fair, 40 and a single dad, had just broken up with his girlfriend. He found out there was no limit on how much landlords could raise their rent in Calgary. He yearned to put down some roots in a house, especially for his then 2-year-old whom he had with a previous partner. I'm not sure why this is relevant. It was also in the middle of the pandemic. House prices were falling. Fair felt he had a shot at earning his place in the vaunted club of home ownership. Fair is a foreman at a mechanical company that offers retrofit services, including plumbing and gas, earning an income of just under $100,000 a year. As the closure of daycares during the pandemic made it more difficult to care for his child, consequently threatening his employment, he slowly warmed to the idea of living with his parents his parents who could help with the childcare while he saved enough money to buy a home. And they basically just talk about how this has slipped away as he's lived at home. And there are so many people that have lived at home. And even in the boom town, the narrative just makes no sense anymore. I mean, if you look at the amount of people online and who's making these videos of why you should move to Calgary, moving to Calgary channels, and they're trying to tag on to all the people that are moving, it's all real estate people. It's all real estate people and mortgage brokers. I can't find a single person who's actually just a genuine person. I mean, a lot of them pretend to be genuine, and you have to really dig into the nuance to find out, oh yeah, they are actually a realtor. But it's very interesting. When you look at a recent poll, fewer than 1/4 of Calgarians say the city's on the right track, while 2/3 feel the opposite, a recent public opinion poll found. So, I mean, again, this narrative is kind of falling apart. And even with the story that I just read, that reminds us of 2021 on this channel. We will see what happens. So anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, I'd highly recommend that you check out that video there. If you're looking for a VPN to get around all the censorship in Canada, go to expressvpn.com/marketmania. That's the VPN that I use. I will see you in the next one. Take care.